And hello, welcome in. This is Magi. We're doing some Runeterra, well, looking at the cards that made it back to standard. From the get-go, we got Lulu back, support archetype. That's cool. Honestly, like it. Slight elusive stuff, but her champion spell is pretty fun, and with the help picks and whatnot from the level up, the spell that you get from her when she levels up is pretty funny to use, and I like the support archetype a lot. Inventive Chemist coming back, pretty nice. It's a 1-mana 2/1 that deals some burn damage after a while, It's a shame that we don't have Ziggs back, because I liked playing Ziggs a lot with the extra damage whenever you destroy a landmark, etc., or when one gets destroyed. Grow an ally to 3/3 this round. Purpleberry Shade coming back is interesting, especially if you pass the first turn and then play units and then just grow one of the units or whatever, or even, I don't know, you just play, you play like the Inventive Chemist on turn 1, and then on the next turn you can attack with a 3/3 basically, or something like that. It can be pretty good. I like the, it's burst speed, so you use it, and even if you block like a unit, like if a unit blocks and stuff and it would be favorable for them, you can use this to essentially grow your unit to possibly trade better, or etc. I like the creative usages of this, so to speak. When you summon another Yordle, give me +2 this round. I would love to play an Yordle archetype again, so Yordle newbie is pretty funny. Yordle Smith, give all allies with equal or less power than me a quick attack this round. Fun. I like this. It's good to see this without Poppy. Poppy was kind of toxic. I love Poppy as a champion, but her archetype was just Swarm. So seeing this back is pretty nice. Seeing it without Bard, though, is sad. Flamespitter, grant impact and to attack on burst is pretty cool. Prowling Projectile, Yumi's champion spell, making it back in is pretty nice. It's good. Entrapment is pretty great. I like this a lot, especially against, I played this a lot against when Rise was meta. I would just play a lot of Teemo and Caitlyn, and I would play Entrapment because then I could just pick the Delve, and we would basically get like a lot of puff caps on all the copies there and on the Delves, and it was just a lot. It was very nice. But most of the time it's just a 9 puff caps towards Teemo level up, so that's cool. Hothead, I like this. Random keyword and +1/+1. I wonder if Kaiser is gonna make a comeback from this, because Shurima. Spirit Portal, interesting, because it's like discard plus grant allies +1/+1 on focus speed. It's an interesting card overall. I wonder if Swarm is gonna be the new thing that Banal goes for more now, instead of playing. Never mind, ignore that thought. Bandle always has been just Swarm, so for the most part, Swarm and Burn. I hope there's some other cards that make it back that are cool. This one's nice because it's zany, it's random, I like it. I like the randomness. Also, it's a Fae, also it's in Targon. It's cool. Big fan. This one, Wizened Wizard. You see it in Path of Champions for what's it called? For Vegas deck. But even then I usually cut the copy. In standard, however, could be nice. I'm not sure. It's also a Yordle. Also looks cute. I like it. Cute Yordles. Stress Defense is a fun card. Ember Monk is an interesting one, but also it's like for the Swarm archetype, so I'm a bit worried about that Banal just becomes I don't know, Swarm. 4-mana 5/4 with Spell Shield in Banal is a bit worrying. Yeah, not a fan of that card. This one's cool, the Arena Mech Master, but that was all for your Bandle City. Gangplank coming back. You've been warned comes back. Narwhal is elusive, but it's got vulnerable. It's an interesting one to come back, I guess. Monkey Idol is coming back. Interesting. I wonder if there's something cool you could do with a Monkey Idol and like buffing it up and stuff like that. Who knows? Double tap, well, double up, I guess, is an interesting card to use, but I'm not sure how much usage is. We'll see. Dreadway, of course, comes back as well. It's a bit jarring, though, to see. Fiora is back. Dragon Shower is back, which is going to be great for the dragon decks with particularly Elder Dragon, Aurelion, and Shyvana, you know, depending on what you play, what variant you play, and stuff like that. Seeing Dragon Shower back is pretty nice, especially since it's some draw. It's a +1 for the dragons themselves. Most of the time they'll just kill this, but more than anything, this would have been really fun with the Draconic Arms, you know, the thing that turns the wearer, more precisely Fiora, into a dragon. You know, Dragon Chow with Fiora was pretty funny when you had the equipment on her. But, you know, it's whatever. Mage Seeker Conservator. Oh, you know, I don't know. Never liked it too much. Most 6-cost spells from a region other than Demacia. Oh, other than Demacia. That could be nice. But I don't see it being played much in Demacia, really. Lauren Protege, it's whatever. Vanguard Redeemer is an elite, you know. I didn't realize that that one was rotated. Lauren Blade Keeper is not an elite. Wait, are the Lauren cards never elites? Yeah, they're not elites. Huh. It's okay. I don't see it getting played. Support is very nice on Demacia. Scout. This one is a scout card and it's making it back. I'm not sure why though. Rally with Barrier. Golden Ages is pretty fun to use, but most of the time I don't see it like I mean, it's a rally in Demacia. It's always going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be back in the game, but with Champion Strength being gone, maybe. Who knows? A Swift Wing Lancer is a pretty cool card. I like the art of it. I like that it's Challenger with Last Breath effects, 5 mana, 5/5, Elite, and Bird, because it's an elite that is riding on a bird, I guess. Cyphria's making a comeback. We've got the Scout Dragon coming back, but I don't see why they removed the Quinn if they are bringing back a lot of scouts. But at the same time, you know, this is cool for dragons. Aside from that, Bright Steel Formation when I'm summoned or attack if all allies barrier is round. Ooh. This is a buff for Clash of Giants. Braum on Scarred Weaver makes sense with Scargrounds, Vladimir coming back, you know. Makes sense, obviously. Troll Scavenger is fine. It's like whatever. I mean, it's good for volley, I guess. And Clash of Giants and stuff like that. Basically it's gonna be 2 mana 3/4 in Freljord all the time. Scargrounds is back. Wait, that one was rotated? I guess so. Take Heart is back, which I believe is also Brom's champion spell, so it makes sense that it's back, you know. Steffen. Emma Maiden. Interesting that that one's back. It's good for Scargrounds, but also for possibly like a Plunder deck and Freljord. With Gangplank. Could be good. I'm not sure. Rhymefang being back is interesting, especially since Brom is back, so yeah, cool to see. Tarkas is back. That's, I'm not sure if it's a nerf or a buff for Clash. It is a nerf, I think, because it's a 5-mana unit. It's a 5/8 that deals damage to all allies as well. But it's great for Skargrounds and Braum and stuff like that, you know. Mother Rinna, of course, comes back as well. We've got the Yeti coming back here, the 7-mana Ancient Yeti that reduces its cost with Overwhelm. And that's cool. Now we'll have a lot more Yetis to play with. I mean, this is cool, but also we still have all the other Yeti cards that were used in Ash LeBlanc. I wonder if Nuna and Willem will be in the game as well, possibly with an Yeti archetype. Could be interesting. Yasuo is back. Health Potion is back. Interesting. Pix is back, of course, since Lulu is back. Makes sense that Pix is back as well. Flower Child is back. Greenlight Lookout is back. Yordle, the Fuzzy Caretaker, is back. We can do the support train now again. And also, we could do a Yordle Fey deck, sort of, you know? With like Lulu and stuff. Lulu and maybe Nora or something like that. Could be kind of funny. Makes sense that Windswept Hillock is back with Yasuo in the game again. Yona is back. Vladimir. There's Crimson Blood Letter. Oh, it's a cat. I didn't know that it's a cat. Makes sense that it's back though. Blade's Edge being back is... I don't know why you would main deck it, but I guess it has its usages, you know? Yeah, the Crimson units coming back, Legion Grenadier. I didn't even know that was gone, but it is cool, possibly even for a Gangplank and Samira deck, you know, which is just aggro, but with Plunder. And Legion Grenadier is going to be pretty good in that, probably. Arena Bookie is interesting. It's a Yordle as well. Guillotine. Huh. It's basically disintegrate. Not really. Like, kinda. I don't know. Interesting to see it back. I didn't like this card, personally, too much, you know? Fawn of a Rose back. But, you know, the rose, the black rose, you know? I don't know. Like this, the reputation archetype is gone practically. And we've got, like, Gal sucks. And LeBlanc is gone as well. So I don't see why the Black Rose units, Fawn of a Rose, you know, being back is weird. This is great for Jhin. And it's a nice card if you just play spiders, like spider aggro. Grant me +1/+1 for each other ally you have. So this grows to, when you have a full board, you get +5/+5. So a 7/6 with Overwhelm in Noxus. But it's an interesting one because you don't want to play, I don't know when it's worth it. I mean, having a 4/3 for 4 mana with Overwhelm isn't really great, so you want to use it at 4+ units, probably. Not sure if this one is going to play it. Survival Skills is pretty amazing. Looking forward to it, especially with, like, Out of the Way. Could be interesting. But Riven is gone. And is Riven on there? I don't get it. Shumpo. Don't like rallies. I don't like rallies in Noxus in particular. We've got the Yeti back. Reputation Yeti. We've got Vi back. We've got Thermogenic back. We've got Stress Testing back, which is interesting. Especially with, like, your cards are fleeting landmark, you know? If you accidentally draw all the cards that are, you know, whatever, but also it doesn't really get played much, you know? Eager Apprentice is basically a free unit. Attune has been removed sort of in a lot of regions, right? Like, or ever, I don't know, the Shell Shockers are gone, but Ego Apprentice is back, which is interesting. Flash of Brilliance being back is also interesting, because you basically use it for free and then get a 6 mana spell. I'm sad that this one is back. Wow. It's interesting that Lux didn't make a comeback. And it's sad to see this come back when Heimer is gone. This one's going to be good with Updraft. Assembly Bot is pretty interesting. Hexcore Foundry is pretty cool with Mushrooms, but I don't see it played because Mushrooms is already pretty good. Like, you don't need to delay your turn a little bit like that. You know, we're playing a 3 mana landmark that can also be destroyed quite easily. Swap Bot is super fun, so I'm looking forward to playing that more. Aside from that, we got Glorious Evolution back, so it makes sense that Acorn is gone. This is fairly interesting, but making cards tech and giving stuff augment, you know, when some augments cards have been removed and when Heimerdinger isn't in the game anymore, I don't really see it. Like, why? And Ballistic Bot is great, back. This is cool. I like this. Fresh is back, Hecarim is back, Oblivious Islander is amazing. I'm glad it's back. Haunted Relic is amazing. I'm glad it's back. It's a shame that Callista is no longer in standard, because Haunted Relic was like a guaranteed way to level up Callista. You would just pass on turn 2, then you play Callista on turn 3, play Haunted Relic, and then attack with the Unleashed Spirits. And that was usually how you do it, or you just use them to block and stuff like that. This is either way, it's a good card. I like it a lot, you know. Onslaught of Shadows makes sense that the Spectral Riders are back, with Hecarim being back as well. Got the Iron Harbinger, grant me +1 attack for each ephemeral ally you have. Interesting. I don't see it getting played much. I don't think this was ever quite good. Kill an ally to summon 2 saplings. Again, makes sense for makes sense for Hecarim, but also, why did I rotate the other kill stuff? This with Mordekaiser could be a lot of fun. The box bestows Stirred Spirits, support, ephemeral, 2 attack, pretty cool. Especially with Hecarim. Sivir's back. Shaped Stone is back. Ooh. I get now why, I get why action has been rotated, but Shaped Stone being back is really cool. Overall, you know? And this with action was pretty done rough, you know? Rite of Arcane is back. Very good. I like that a lot. Rite of Passage is back. Very good. I like that a lot. Why is Zillion not back, though? Callous Bone Crusher costs 3, and when I'm summoned, grant me Overwhelm. With Reputation, interesting. Seeing Reputation come back to Shurima as well. Unworthy. Interesting. Especially when Ramp is so... Ramp exists. So if you play Shurima against Freljord, you might run this and could be pretty good to kill a follower. But it's just a follower. It's not a champion or anything like that. Desert's Wrath. Ooh. Azean Hecarim could be really, really strong. Careful Prep is back. That's pretty great. I love that card. Tarek, Aphelios, Messenger Sigil, Grand Slam. Grand Slam is an elemental spell and is back again. Stun an enemy, deal 3 to it if you summon the landmark this round. Is pretty cool. But also, I don't see it getting played much. Mountain Sojourners being back makes sense, especially with Tarek being back, you know. Especially with the trains, you know, the support trains. Mountain Goat is back. Frightened Ibex is back for the end of the support train. We've got the Unveiled Temple. Each round, the first time you play 2 other cards, refill 2 mana and grant your strongest ally +1 attack. Look, I feel like it's a cool effect, but also I haven't really seen it played much. Even when it was on standard, like when it was no rotation and everything. No, I never seen Veil Temple being played really. You know, Earth Elemental, pretty cool. It's an overwhelm unit in Targon, with gems. Super cool star chart being back is pretty darn amazing. Zoe's not back though. Gifts from Beyond, pick a moon weapon to create, makes sense with Aphelios being back. Arbiter of a Peak, I cost 1 less for each time you've targeted or supported allies this game. Pretty great as well for the end of a rain train. It's a good thing to use for a finisher in your support deck with, I don't know, Lulu and Thingy-Magic, Tarek. Mentor of a Stones is pretty amazing. I like him a lot. If you behold a Celestial, create a message in your deck and grant Celestial allies everywhere +1/+1. You could do a dog deck with this. And we're through. That was it. Probably could have done this in the other video, to be honest. Thoughts? Honestly, I'm a bit scared of seeing Lulu Tarek a lot because that was pretty darn strong, but I wonder if with some changes to rotation made and stuff like that, if there's going to be some cool stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing more Yasuo because Yasuo is kind of interesting, you know. Yasuo Leona is going to be pretty strong. I forgot that Leona is my game. Like, I remember that Leona and Diana are no longer going to be a deck in standard, but Leona and Yasuo is going to be back for sure. And that's going to be a pretty good deck for beginners, especially. I'll have to experiment with Vi. I wonder if Vi and Ashe could be viable, possibly as a reputation and Frost, you know, deck, and you just buff Vi up or something like that. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but it sounds cool on paper, sort of, you know, to just experiment a little bit. I'm glad that a lot of the RNG and a lot of the toxic elements that don't interact with the game too much, like just Zed, like ephemeral aggro, elusive aggro, and swarms decks, as well as darkness, which is just stall until you win, is gone. Heimerdinger's biggest problem was, in my opinion, just the you had the Heimerdinger was great, but he was played almost exclusively with Jace because of the elusive thing, because of the elusive turret, and you would just play him and then play 6-cost spells to get the elusive turret. I wonder if it would be good to give like that one brash instead of elusive or something like that. That could be interesting. Because you've got Fearsome in there as well. Like, just no elusive and just brash. I feel like that would make him a lot better. Could open him up to other concepts and stuff like that, you know. Or maybe add like what if there was just the wall robot, you know, wall tech unit that is formidable. For instance, you know. Like a 1/6 or 0/6 unit, you know. But that would also be a non-synergy with his effect of buffing up tech turrets on his level up. I don't know. I'm surprised they rotated Runeterra champions because they're so limited in their card pool, you know. Rise, I don't see Rise ever making like a comeback outside of that one Ionia Rise deck that was a thing, or that one Shadow Isles Rise deck that was a thing where you just played Shadow Isles, you know, to remove all the cards and then play Rise and stuff. I'm sad about Bard. Genuinely, I'm heartbroken about Bard being rotated because, frankly, Bard was cool. And he had a lot of different fun decks, you know? Bandle is still playable. You know, Lulu is great. I'm sad that we only got like one champion per region to come back, you know? Oh, and Aphelios as well. Aphelios is also back. I guess it makes sense to, you know, bring Tarek back with Lulu. I'm not sure if Shen is actually rotated or not. But yeah. with that said, let's look at the preview. The rotation another time around. This is a post published onto the Runeterra website. I found it over here thanks to the LOR report over here who retweeted it and stuff like that. Anyways, this is going to give us some more context about stuff, so we're going to read through that. I'm going to try and formulate some thoughts on it. Again, I love the game. I love the switch to POC, but I like also that they're not giving up on PvP. It's just going to be less often that there's going to be updates and stuff like that. PvP will change a lot, but the PvE stuff is honestly what I enjoyed the most anyways. And the creativity in deck building and how accessible it was, even though that was also the kind of downfall for Runeterra, where because you didn't have to buy a lot of like loot boxes or whatever, or card packs and stuff like that, and other predatory mechanics, you essentially ended up having to you just ended up having access to all the cards. Like aside from a few like epic cards and a few rare cards, I think I own all of the cards, like all the champions and stuff like that, and have plenty of the like the wild cards and stuff like that. So I never felt the need to buy anymore. You know, like when a new expansion came out, I just bought the champions immediately with like the fragments and the wild cards. With that in mind, it's a shame, you know, because they could have made a lot of money by just having the card packs in the store or something like that. Make them still like you can get them free to play, you know, but you could also just buy them. Would have been good. Either way, with a year and a new set comes a new standard rotation. I wanted to take some time to talk through our design process and preview some of the cards leaving and returning to standard. Although lore PvP will be changing a lot in the future, we will still want both standard and eternal to feel like healthy formats with their own diverse metagame, and rotation is key to that. We're making some surprising changes across all cards this rotation, but for this article, I'm going to focus on the champions and maybe sneak in some non-champion hints where I can. Some things will never change unless you make them. The linear champs. Out. Pike, Rek'Sai, Vega, Senna, Diana, Nocturne, in, Braum, and Vladimir. I'm starting with this group to rip the band-aid off right away. Yes, we are rotating Lurk, Darkness, and much of Nightfall. We knew this change would be controversial because these decks have extremely dedicated fan bases and have been fixtures in Legends of Runeterra for a long time, but it's also precisely why we feel like they need a break from standard. In design, we sometimes refer to an archetype as being linear, which means that decks of that archetype only care about cards specifically and narrowly tuned to their archetype. Lurk is a great example of a highly linear deck. You only want to put cards in your deck that say Lurk, and it's hard for us to make Lurk cards that other decks want without unbalancing the Lurk deck. This also means that it's very hard to design new cards that might interest a Lurk player, but are also appealing to other players. The end result is that Lurk deck lists barely change and facing them becomes very repetitive. Linear decks aren't inherently bad, but they become a lot more interesting when they aren't always around, hanging out just below the top tier and ready to strike after each new balance patch. Standard is a healthy environment if the decks you're facing change over time, and rotating linear archetypes in and out lets us create that variety without having to nerf Pike for the 8th time. We're also rotating back in the Vladimir Braum Scars archetype, a linear deck that may look a little bit different after its time in Eternal. While they're on rotation vacation, these decks will still be around in Eternal, and we're considering how often we want to make that format available going forward. Also, much like an Owlcat glued to the Vandal tree, Path of Champions does not rotate. We'll keep adding more champions, including linear ones, to that game mode. So, right away, I do agree that we need variety. Like, if you constantly queue up against the same deck over and over and over again, you just get bored, you get burnt out, you don't want to play against this. I remember a while ago when people kept playing Ram with Trundle and Tryndamere, and just played War Mother's Call, and that was the game, or Feel the Rush, or whatever the card was, you know, the summon 2 champions, grow them to 10/10, you know. You just did that. It was boring to play against. Then there was a time when a lot of people played Azir and Aurelia, which was just frustrating to play against. It wasn't like impossible to win against it, but most of the time we would just lose by a certain point. And it didn't feel rewarding to play against it whatsoever. I really disliked that time, you know? And I would just surrender to save mental, basically. With Pyke Rek'Sai, you know, the Lurk archetype, there were some people that tried to make Pyke work with Hallowed, for instance, which was a lot of fun. Or like do a Pyke printer. I believe Sunny did that. But aside from that, I haven't seen like Rek'Sai anywhere. And I've only seen like Pyke and Rek'Sai being played inside those 2 archetypes. Pyke is super satisfying to play. Rek'Sai doesn't do much aside from buff lurkers, I guess. And they work quite well together. But because they're in 2 different regions, you just have to mash them together and stuff like that. If we had something like an Ixtal region or something like that, you know, or maybe if we had Rengar as a Runeterran champion, or maybe there's a Void region or something like that, and Rengar is sort of in there. I wonder if that could be cool. Like, maybe like an Ixtal or jungle, or I don't know. Imagine if Rengar was in the game, and he's like a lurker as well, but he's a different flavor of lurk, you know? Whereas Pyke is more about, you know, there's like the free attackers and Bilgewater, there's granting vulnerable, etc. And Pyke is about striking enemies and then just clearing up the whole board with Pyke. Rek'Sai's lurk cards are more about using Overwhelm, using big stats, and using predicts as well to guarantee a lurk. And Rek'Sai's lurk also buffs other lurkers. It's more of a swarm type of deal, whereas Pyke's was more of a you make sure that enemies stay dead kind of thing, you know? I like that. What if there are lurkers like Fiddlesticks and Rengar that jump out, quite literally? Like Jarvan, sort of, like hand traps. What if there are hand trap lurkers, you know, that activate the effects when enemies do something at the cost of mana? So you have to have that mana ready, you know, like spell lurks, etc. You know, that could be fun, you know, that or a spell that does more damage with lurk, you know, or like every 2 times you lurk, it increases the damage by 1 or something like that, you know, and it costs a certain mana cost, and you want to play it, you know, with Fiddlesticks. That could be interesting. I believe if there was a 3rd lurk champion, there would be more variety for lurk, but at the moment, you know, I don't see Rek'Sai or Pyke being played anywhere. Like, Pyke maybe somewhere, but if Pyke was to remain in standard, he wouldn't find a deck, most likely, because he's just only playable with Rek'Sai, practically, and that sucks. So I get their point. Playing against lurks, lurk people, like lurk decks and stuff like that, most of the time it goes exactly the same way. There's no combat tricks most of the time. There are no really cool stuff, because you basically just want to play maybe some predicts, but for the most part you play the lurk cards, maybe a rally or something like, I don't know. Most decks look the same. Vega and Senna is similar. Senna did see some play with Nasus and some play with Targon, but for the most part, Senna and Vega is just one archetype. Vega saw some play with Nora, but that was only to stall using portals. And that's not the healthiest, it's not the most interesting stuff. Although I do find that Vega and Senna was more, like Darkness archetype was cooler than the Lurk archetype, in this way that you had different types of win cons that all revolved around Darkness, sure, but you had different ways of achieving that. Or you essentially had different play patterns that were similar but not exactly the same. And even if you didn't draw yourself, you know, you wouldn't just surrender as a Darkness player, you know. Meanwhile, a lot of like lurk players, when they missed lurk twice or 3 times, they would just surrender. I've noticed, and that sucks. Then a Nocturne. Honestly, Nightfall is a bit rough. I wish there were more cards to activate Nightfall with, or maybe something like a Ravoon, but for Nightfall. That basically reduces the first Nightfall card you play, and it's always night for us each round. Would be an interesting idea, I'd imagine. And Braum Vladimir is a fun, although sometimes a bit overwhelming deck. I am looking forward to seeing it though, because it is pretty good for beginners that don't beginners that have moved past just playing elites because it's very simple and want to learn something that is a bit more complex but still relatively easy, very linear. I get that point though, I believe that if you add more, maybe if you add a darkness card in a region that is different from the Shadow Elves or Bandle, that could be possibly something that could make darkness viable in other decks. Same with Diana is Nightfall in Targon and Nocturne is Nightfall in Shadow Elves. You played Nocturne is also for Fearsome, but most of the time you just were better off playing other units or other champions and did a much better job at Fearsomes if you wanted to play Fearsomes. If there was Nightfall in another region outside of maybe, I don't know, Shurima Nightfall, or if you played what they did with Daybreak, maybe that would be cool. Demacia Nightfall, once the night rises, the Mage Seekers come out and Nightfall, the enemy's spells cost 1 more this round, or something like that, Stuff like that could make a big difference in shaping decks and creating more opportunities. I don't know. I feel like what would have been amazing would be a third lurk champion that is a different flavor of lurk, so that you have that third champion, let's say Fiddlesticks, Fiddlesticks and Rek'Sai, Fiddlesticks and Pike, or Pike and Rek'Sai. And each of them are different, kind of, and play differently. That would have been very fun. I get what they mean, though. We need linear decks. We just can't have, 3 individual deck archetypes, one of which is barely played, one of which is very, very, very linear, and the other of which is just basically a control pile that is kind of frustrating to play against, What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The needs improvement champions. Out, Lucian, Jarvan, Tryndamere, Darius, Renekton, Kalista, and Kayle. In, Thresh, Yasuo, Vi. We want every champion that hits the table to feel like it's worth of their table, but let's be honest, they don't always land where you want them. Even if every champion has its own set of fans who will swear that it's totally B tier if you believe hard enough, there are some who have struggled to become relevant, but they don't have to stay that way. And sometimes all you need is a quick Eternal vacation and some life patch surgery to come back living your best life. In Eternal, we can take bigger risks, since the format is more powerful and less likely to tip over due to balance change. But Walrus, you say, Thresh, Yasuo, and Vi didn't receive any buffs in Eternal, which is true, but as any Yasuo player will tell you, just wait, we scale. We're standard having a lower power level, and we're bringing back a couple rotated champions that we think can be more competitive in the lower power format and struggle to make a dent in Eternal. One of the great things about a changing format like Standard is that strength is very context dependent. A few new tools can be all you need to go from hard times to hard to beat. I get it. I feel like that's good, Yasuo with Jhin could be a very fun deck, by the way. Thresh together with Hecarim, Thresh with other champions like Mordekaiser, for instance, as well, where you kill your units and revive them to only kill them again. Could be interesting. I'm looking forward to experimenting with that, And yeah, because the power level in Standard is lower, if you rotate champions out, you basically make it possible for champions like Thresh, Yasuo, and Vi to come back into the game. So I'm looking forward to seeing what these champions are going to be like. And yeah, Tryndamere and Darius, Renekton, were often just used as like something to slot in because you're already in those regions. Jarvan was pretty good with scouts, with elites, with like the other stuff. If you were in Demacia anyways, you would often play Jarvan just because it is pretty cool to pop in on attack on turn 6, pull the strongest unit and deal a lot of damage to it, you know? And Lucian just never felt really the right thing, you know? I don't think Rally is really what Lucian needs, to be fair. And I think his level up should be something else entirely. But hey, what do I know? Better off alone the breakup champs. Heimerdinger, Quinn, Sejuani, Zed out. Hecarim, Lulu, Gangplank in. Speaking of changing context, our next set of champions are all about stepping out of their comfort zones and into new and exciting life on their own. The rain is coming down. I hope you don't hear it. For much of LOR, we've designed champions as pairs or threes with related mechanics. There's a lot of merit to this design strategy, as it gives a champion a natural home and gives them straightforward deck building hooks for new mechanics. But it can also lock certain champions together, causing certain dominant strategies to become repetitive. These locked pairings can also mean that a champion is balanced around the strongest use case and can't really broaden their horizon. Hecarim Zed is a mostly known quantity, but can Hecarim Azir bring a different flavor of ephemeral aggro to Standard? Where will Jace go now that his mentor Heimerdinger has left the format? Will Gangplank and Misfortunes succeed with their old first mates marooned in Eternal? Well, maybe that last one isn't the best example, but we still want to see what new synergies emerge once the more clear choices are taken away. That's a good point, honestly. As I mentioned previously, like, some champions just are glued together. Like, Heimer Jace, for instance, was a great deck, but mostly because of elusives and that you got through Heimer. And they both synergized quite well because of a 6-cost archetype. It would be interesting if Lux made a comeback, to be fair. Lux and Heimer, Lux and Jace, Lux, Jace and Heimer. Or just Jace Heimer. I wonder if that would change something, but again, Lux has the issue that she's a very spell-focused unit with 6-cost spells as a big thing. And meanwhile, Demacia is supposed to be the anti-spell region. So, I don't know. Embrace the unexpected even if it scares you. The weird champs. Yuumi, Riven, Bard, Kayn, Varus, Aatrox, and Ryze are out, Taric and Fiora are in. Some of the most controversial archetypes in LOR have one thing in common: alternate win cons. Sometimes this is literal, like Ryze and his world runes, but sometimes also means having a strategy that is unique enough that the opponent struggles to interact with it normally, such as Riven buffing a unit to 40 attack out of nowhere, or Bard dooting his way to 300 chimes, or Aatrox ending the world and running you over with huge Darken. As my deck collection of 20 different Ryze decks can attest, these unique strategies can be really exciting to play, but they can also be very frustrating to play against, because they operate slightly off a normal axis of a game. They're cool when they're the unlikely underdog who surprises you with a strong match, and infuriating when they're meta-dominant and you have to bend over backwards to combat them. These strategies are important to keeping the game fresh. They inspire deck builders, create memorable moments, and keep every match from being a units versus removal affair. But that variety starts to fall flat when the same alternate win con sticks around. As the name suggests, these decks need to alternate to stay fresh, and that's why we're taking out some familiar faces and bringing back Fiora and Taric. While Fiora has been dominant in the past, we felt like she hit a good balance right before the first rotation, and she's primed for a return. Similarly, while Taric was dominant with Poppy before his trip to Eternal, we want to bring him back with his Bandle buddy because his support-centric gameplay is so unique. I do agree. Like, Ryze basically just played the same way most of the time. You just had removal all the time, or ended up stalling. But for the most part, you just played him with Ionia because you got to deny enemies, stun enemies, and recall enemies. Meanwhile, you played your stuff, you healed up a bunch, and you played your world runes. The alternate win con was your only win con. And that sucks. With Bard, I liked the way it's synergized with Nora in particular, or big dudes, or Revna, for instance, which was funny. But also, it's just big dudes. And that's dudes and not dudes. But I guess dudes also works. Riven was fun. It felt complex a lot of the time with combat tricks and stuff like that. Especially with Gwen. Gwen Riven was a lot of fun. Victor and Riven were a lot of fun as well. I still believe that Bard was a bad choice to rotate, but that's just my opinion. I feel like with a lot of new cards coming into Standard again, cards like Bard and his package, you know, could be very fun. Stuff like Banana Blaster is pretty darn cool, you know, to remove stuff with. And I don't know. But also, I guess his win con, his play pattern and stuff like that are possibly a bit too linear as well. Either way, Yuumi is good. Yuumi is gone. That's good. Goodbye doesn't mean forever. The texture champions. Out, LeBlanc, Fizz, Nami, Karma, Seraphine, Action, and Pantheon. In, Aphelios, and Sivir. There are a lot of very familiar, popular names in that list. So let's take a brief moment of silence or celebration. Fuck yeah, Karma and Seraphine gone. Thank you. This group of rotation champs is all about fulfilling a major goal for this and future rotations, making Standard feel meaningfully different from both Eternal and previous Standard formats. For the first rotation, we had to focus our energy on establishing a new power level for Standard, and I do think we hit that goal. But because we left in a number of format stalwarts, the Standard meta often looked a lot like things we've seen before. Champions like Seraphine and Akshan can play in a number of different decks, but the general experience of them is often the same, no matter which format they are in. And as long as you stayed strong, they'd always be leading the conversation of what decks were playable. You also probably noticed that a lot of the champions on this list are very spell-centric, and that's not an accident. Because of LOR's core rules, spells and reactivity have a natural advantage. Saving spell mana, using the stack to react to your opponent's plays, and the limited number of units you can have at one time all mean the game engine favors playing lots of spells anyways. And these spell-slinger champs really lean into that advantage. This also makes spell-centric champs much harder to nerf, because their most potent advantages are in how synergistic their decks are, rather than what's on the champion card. Since these strategies have been dominant for so long, we want to try Standard with fewer options in this space and see how the meta evolves. While it's important for all rotating cards, I do specifically want to call out for these champs, we do not want to lock them in Eternal forever. For Standard to make sense as a thriving format, we need future rotations, and the team is already planning for that as I write this. While we want to take a break from Fizz showing up every time we print new Bilgewater cards, there's almost certainly a world where he can slip back into Standard. The same is true for most, if not all, of the champions leaving this rotation. I agree with that as well. I believe that the core unique thing about Legends of Runeterra is the spell stack mechanic and how, you know, you can use focus spells at any point as long as you're not in combat. You can use not in combat and not in response to stuff. You can use burst spells at any point. You can use slow spells instead of one of, like when you've got an action, you've got fast spells that play as a reaction to an action, like attacking, like blocking, like slow spells, like other fast spells, etc. That's cool, and it adds a lot of complexity to the game, arguably too much for some card gamers out there who just special summon Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters from the deck for 40 minutes and then, you know, first turn KO you. But it's very unique. It's very interesting. I like that a lot about the game. And because of that, spells are always a big part of decks. You want some spells in your decks, you know, for the most part. Elusives, you know, played with Nami, for instance, and Fizz, would just basically play spells as per normal, you know, remove enemies, react to what the enemy does, etc. But it would also buff up the whole, you know, board when Nami's on board which is rough, you know, it leans very heavily into that. Meanwhile, stuff like Ezreal, who's been in Eternal forever now, isn't too strong on his own, but his effect is just so strong because he can just burst you down from 20 HP to 0 in a single turn by just playing a bunch of spells in response to the stuff that you do. And that seems annoying because it's like, oh, the reason why you play the game is the reason why these people are strong, not exactly the champion itself. You know, even if you kill the Ezreal, his deck is still strong, I guess, or the Fizz or the Nami. Their board is still strong, etc. So removing that seems pretty nice. I do find this point about Spellslinger champions leaning into the advantage of running spells very, very cool. I like that. This is worded very interesting. And I feel like they do a good job in explaining why these champions have to sort of go away, especially like Karma and Seraphine. But yeah. But wait! There's more. If you made it this far, you've seen all of the champions that will make up the new standard environment. But you cannot build a deck with champs alone. Why I can't list off all of the rotating cards here, I can give a couple hints about what you can expect in the upcoming season. An old ally that also might be something for Nico to look into. A spell that deals 4 damage to the enemy nexus. Decimate. I'm not sure about this. Maybe this is about Braum. Because of the Poros he summons. Fearsome version of an old friend. Not sure what this means. This isn't about Braum, because this is not about champions. A stunning return and another that costs twice as much for twice the effect. I have no clue. The best blocker for when you want to kill your opponent. Huh? A way to really punish those sleeping on the job. A card that has a lot of synergy with one new mechanic and very little synergy with another. And woof, 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 woof. I have no clue what this is about. I'll have to think about it for a while. Okay, I got nothing. I've pondered about this for a while. If you made it this far, you've seen option to make up standard environment, but you cannot build a deck with champs alone. Can't list off all the rotating cards here. I can give a couple hints what you can expect. I wonder if, like, because we're getting Arcane soon, there's a chance that we could possibly get like Warwick into the game as well, which would make sense for Wolf or Nico, and have like a dog archetype perhaps that is sort of cool with like woof woof woof. New mechanic could be Deathless. You know, synergy with one new mechanic and very little synergy with another. What is another new mechanic that was introduced? I guess we had, what did we have? We had Titanic. Maybe it's a... Maybe we get a card that obliterates units when they die, but is Titanic. Or maybe something that grants Deathless to units that die, but reduces or increases costs or something like that for your stuff. I don't know. That could be interesting. Really punish those sleeping on the job. Sleepy bubble trouble. Is what I'm thinking of. The Zoe spell, or I'm not sure if it's Zoe's spell, actually, not the champion spell. The thing that stuns and then deals damage to a stunned unit. But I don't see... I'm not sure if this is like new stuff or if this is like old stuff coming back again. So, but if this is like a new card, sleeping on the job, sleeping would be a good hint for Lilia, perhaps. Zoe possibly making it back could also be a thing. sleeping on the job. No clue. Best blocker when you want to kill your opponent. I don't know. Blocker. A blocker that kills your opponent. Maybe there's going to be a new card that kills whatever is attacking it or something like that. Actually, no. This could be Rammus. This could be Rammus. Since we've got so many champions that got rotated out of Shurima, what if there was Rammus as a new champion in LOR? And Rammus could have a Thorns archetype that basically makes it so that you deal damage back when you get blocked. And that could work really well with Braum, who's made it back to Standard. And Standard, you know, Braum, stuff like that could be very cool, I guess. Blocker when you want to kill, like when you get attacked, or struck, you deal damage back, some return damage to the enemy. And that maybe is like a taunt, like either a taunt mechanic or a Thorns mechanic. Could be very, very interesting actually in the game. And that would be probably really interesting. You know, again, Shurima champion, possibly a good synergy with Scargrounds, with Braum, possibly with Freljord, and like the health buffs and stuff, Sky Splitter, etc. Interesting. Fearsome version of an old friend could be Yona. What if Yoni comes back as a fearsome champion? That could also be... Didn't we have like a champion that was in the game kind of teased? Could also be Warwick for Arcane. Actually could also be Valmor for like a spider archetype. Although he was already fearsome, so I guess that wouldn't be him. Or it, rather. Spell that deals 4 damage to the enemy next to seems like Decimate, which I'm not happy about, because it's like the least satisfying thing to die to Decimate. Old ally, that might be something for Nico to look into, way to really punish, etc. Lilia could be a thing, actually. Like, Lilia, Warwick, Rammus. Warwick with a taunt archetype. Not taunt, like... Warwick could be fearsome. And have like a fearsome archetype in Zon, perhaps? Or perhaps a lifesteal, not really lifesteal, but like heal yourself after killing a unit or something like that, you know? Sort of similar to Kayn, Red Kayn. Rast, you know? That'd be interesting. I'd imagine that like an taunt, like in Hearthstone, or Thorns, like in Thornmail, could be very interesting concept overall, you know? For champions. If we get like a Shuriman champion, it would be Rammus probably. But I don't know. This article was by Riot. I am Walrus, Senior Game Designer, and Jules JP, Global Community Manager. Not actually a Walrus. Game designer working on new cards, life balance, and formerly matchmaking League of Legends, as well as Julian Johnson, who betrayed his love for Viego by becoming a filthy Vayne main to climb to master. You can find him casually sipping tea over his defeated opponents in Runeterra, or nestled by a heart, immersed in a fantasy book. Fun. But yeah, that was all about rotation. Pretty darn cool to see. Some insights into this. I do agree with a lot of it. I do think, however, that there are possibly other ways to do with this situation. What if Warwick was a lurker? that cared less so about hitting lurk and more so about getting more per lurk, you know? Could be interesting. Especially since Time Trick is also in Piltover, it makes sense to have lurk in Piltover, perhaps. So Lurker, Warwick, but then you wouldn't rotate the complete archetype for lurk, right? Honestly, I would love to see a Piltover or Shadow Arts Lurker. Shadow Arts Lurker being Fiddlesticks, and I know that he's like an ancient demon that doesn't have an affiliation with any region, but so is Nocturne. And, you know. Anyways, Fiddlesticks could be a cool lurker, like a hand trap style lurker, you know, that pops out when you try to block and then fears enemies on level up, you know, and you need to attack with fearsome units to level him up or something like that, you know. And a lot of lurkers do have fearsome after all, so that makes sense. And Warwick could be a nice lurker that maybe is more about attacking enemies and like jumps out of your deck when you attack with X amount of units or a lot of dogs or whatever. It could be very interesting as an idea, because in Piltover you'd be able to print Rex, like you could print Pike spell with the Evil Imperfectionist, for instance. You know? You could just create a lot of pikes in your deck, you know, that get summoned and kill the board and stuff. So you would have access to that, which would give variety to lurk as well. I'm just mentioning it because it would be kind of funny. Anyways, if you have any thoughts, suggestions, if you have any ideas of what these could be, like old stuff that comes back or new stuff that is coming to the game, you know, let me know. I had fun here. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. I know it's different from what we usually do, but also we don't usually do really anything. So yay! And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day, and I'll see you around. Bye bye.